Hey, everybody, still got about 2.5, 3 minutes before we kick this one off. Oh, but it's crazy, man. You know, Pat on our team got married last Saturday. It's a few
Oh,
years.
is it? Wow.
Yeah. Good old Pat. Yeah. He was down in Pawleys Island, South Carolina.
Huh.
So got away for a few days with the wife. We flew down there to
Very nice.
watch him say his vows. It's cool. It's really cool.
Very nice.
Did you see that hey, everybody, we still got about 2 minutes, just pre-call chit chat here as we wait for people to join. You see that like stealth fighter that got lost? That was out of like Charlotte, which is where we'd flown into.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
It's like things were a little crazy for a little while. So it's all good. It's all good. And just a reminder, everybody, feel free to drop questions into the chat or the Q&A as we get rolling here. Hey, Dave, see you're on. Haven't chatted in forever. I'll ping you afterwards, or shoot me an email. We'll find some time to connect.
So tomorrow is my second time traveling to Minneapolis, Aaron.
Oh, yeah?
We are doing a workshop there day after for some of the UPS customers. And interestingly, the first time when I visited Minneapolis, it was 99 Fahrenheit. And tomorrow is 86. Wow. I'm like, select that one day of the year when Minneapolis is significantly warmer than Princeton.
That's where Tiffany, another digital strategist we have,
Oh,
moderator.
Yeah,
She's from Minneapolis. Yeah. Hey, everybody, just 30 seconds here before we kick it off.
Go, Princeton.
Look forward to these, my friend. I look forward to these. What do we got here in the chat? Okay, go Princeton, says Carly. I like it. Oh, love it. Too funny. Well, just I think in the interest of time here, it's 3 minutes after the hour. Let's go ahead and kick it off. Happy Tuesday, everybody. My name is Aaron Conant. I'm the co-founder, managing director here at BWG Connect, a giant networking knowledge sharing group in the digital space. I spend the majority of my time talking with brands on a daily basis, try to hit 20 to 30 a week to stay on top of those trends that start up the Fortune 100 and up every vertical. Would love to have a conversation with anybody on the line today. Some people we've chatted with before. I'd love to reconnect. And if it's new, we don't sell anything here at BWG Connect. Just love those strategy sessions as a whole. It's how we stay on top of the newest trends and pain points, but also do a ton of help in, partner selection. There's over 9,000 brands that participate in the network now, and they're constantly sending in those top partners who work. And those are the ones that we reach out to for events like this. But we're also more than happy to do a quick rundown and connect you with the best people around that are vetted out by the fellow industry members here. So a couple of things as we get started. We're kicking it off 3 minutes after the hour, and we're going to wrap this thing up before the end of the hour as well, unless there's a ton of questions, and we'll take it right up to the point. Other than that, drop your questions in the chat, the Q&A, or email me, Aaron, AARON at BWG Connect, and we'll get all those answered real time. And I don't think there's anything else. I think we go ahead and kick it off. Udayan, you and I have been doing these since start of the pandemic almost. These ones go back even before that, but at least a quarterly update. Udayan's a great friend, partner, supporter of the network. NetElixir comes highly recommended. I'm personally biased because he loves data and I'm a scientist. I love data, so this stuff really hits home for me. But these holiday readiness is something we've been doing for years now. And so again, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat or the Q&A and we'll get them answered. But Udayan, I'll kind of kick it over to you. If you want to jump in, intro on yourself and NetElixir.
Absolutely.
And obviously, thanks for jumping on today and being a great friend and partner and supporter.
Thanks so much for having me, Aaron, on this one. I'll just quickly sort of just dive in, Aaron, and just have a deck. Hopefully shouldn't take more than 40 minutes. But
okay.
A quick introduction. This is what I was hoping to present is e-commerce trends and insights. And this, incidentally, Aaron, would be our 16th annual holiday forecast. Believe it or not, our first one was in 2008 in the month of August. And it was like in midst of recession, like 16th. And a little bit of a bragging right, Saran, I don't know as to whether I shared with you, that if you really compare our forecast since then and the actual NRF numbers, which normally gets released in the third week of Jan, I think we have had a higher percentage accuracy rate compared to any other publication or research.
I'm not shocked today. I'm not shocked at this point in time.
So a bit of a bragging right.
So it's so data hungry. I love it. And you crunch it better than anybody.
It is whatever what there is, what I think the data set that we really have access to seems to be a good representation of the entire US e-commerce market as such. I wanted to share some strategic growth recommendations as well, and then some resources for holiday season also. A quick introduction for those of you who don't really know NetElixir. We have been around for almost 20 years now. Very privileged to really partner with Aaron and his team at BWG Connect. We specialize in the retail and the direct-to-consumer e-commerce side, effectively. We have built our own vertical AI marketing platform, which helps us to solve just two problems. One, we are able to break the marketing silos and let the customer journeys decide as to where you should be investing and when and how much. And the second part is we are able to use predictive analytics to predict as to who is likely to be a higher value customer for your business. And that effectively has led us to a rallying cry, Aaron, called say no to average, because the entire e-commerce world, I think, can do a lot better if we really move from this fixation with AOV and average order value to a high value customer. So that's the goal. We are very privileged to be a part of the Google Agency Leadership Circle. 27 out of about 10,000 agencies in the US are a part of that. And we are also a certified National Minority Supplier Development Council member as well. One of the initiatives we are extremely proud of is our Udayan Foundation. So we help girls from underprivileged backgrounds in India. They mostly live in slums with their high school and college education. So about 6 years or 7 years of education, and then really help them with getting a job in various companies and so on. So it's just an initiative. Currently, we are supporting about 22 girls. With this initiative, our aspiration or dream is to scale this to about 50 lives or 50 girls essentially by 2025. So if you are interested at all or this cause is of any interest, you can scan this QR code and just check out the work that we have done. And as I keep saying, even a $5 or a $10 contribution from your side would really go a very long way, very specifically for these girls who literally have unfortunately stopped dreaming. So that's, I think, our goal is to help these girls pursue their dreams. That's, I think, what we are trying to do. A bit about me. I started NetElixir in 2004. Very fortunate to, I mean, probably one of those companies who have really been independent, privately held since then. Have really gone through multiple waves of digital marketing. When we started, there was a small company you may have heard of called Facebook, which started at the same year as well. It has gotten a little bigger than us, but I think we are not complaining. So it's a different space that they are in. Also, I am, again, very privileged to be an innovation fellow at the entrepreneurship center of Columbia Business School called the Lang Center of Entrepreneurship. Do a fair amount of guest lecturing at Johnson School of Management in Cornell, the City University of New York in Baruch, and the Indian School of Business. And if you are would love to connect with anyone looking for insights, data, anything on digital marketing, e-commerce, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. That's my LinkedIn handle, and or email me directly as such. So what I'll start with, Aaron, is just start with sharing the top 3 e-commerce trends for 2023. Now, this is like the first 6 months of 2023 has been interesting, understandably, coming off a COVID bump, and 22 was the first year when sort of realization set in that the e-commerce numbers started flailing in many categories. And we saw the same trend continue in the first half. But it was very interesting to also see that marketplaces continue to really gain the e-commerce market share. I mean, again, per our research, marketplaces now account for at least 42% of the total US retail e-commerce sales, if not higher. And the year-on-year growth in H1, interestingly, for marketplaces sales was around 12%, versus the total e-commerce sales growth of about 6.3%. So overall, I think marketplaces continue to grab a lot of share. A bit of an anecdote I was sharing with Aaron, that when we started doing these holiday forecast webinars in 2008, at that point in time, the marketplaces accounted for less than 8% of the overall US e-commerce share. And that 8% now is most likely will cross 50% this holiday season. Specifically during holiday season, we have seen a tremendous amount of activity on marketplaces as well. So it's fascinating to see as to how the entire landscape has changed, how the consumer behavior has shifted, and how marketplaces have slowly really become a very dominant presence in this entire e-commerce landscape.
Really quick, do you think that's because brands are becoming more aware or having to track more closely the direct-to-consumer side of the business and how expensive it actually is? And maybe there's a pullback in number of direct-to-consumer sites?
That's absolutely right. So I think that's one of the reasons. I think there are three broad reasons which you are seeing. The first is the convenience factor, right? So once you're in the marketplace, you really have a wider access, a wider choice, and you're able to complete the loop quicker. The second part, which somehow I don't think we appreciate as much, and honestly speaking, there is no data to really support this statement that I'm going to make. But I somehow feel that during the COVID times, somehow there was a bit of a shift happened, primarily because maybe in many cases there was some amount of brand dilution also happen as well. So the people or consumers really focused more on the choices available rather than essentially only focusing on the brand part. It was just a sign of the times, because I really needed something, right? And once I sort of, so that was, I think, so my need for a particular product or a category superseded the overall, let us say, my love for a brand, essentially, specifically if the brand was unable to deliver. So I think the supply chain and all of these different things during COVID may have led to a slight amount of shift as well. The third component is interesting. Third is, I think, a combination, when I say marketplaces, of like every large company, whether it is Best Buy, whether it is Lowe's, everyone has their own marketplace as well. So I think there is a very clear shift from the larger companies, which just a few years back were very, very clear that they'll focus on their direct-to-consumer, just how to sell their products. So it's a combination of multiple things which are in play. In fact, our forecast is by 2030, we believe that it's highly likely that 2/3 of the US online sales happens from marketplaces, and 1/3 happens directly from the website as such. Companies are very much aware that there is the higher cost of operation, essentially, when you operate in the marketplaces, but it is what it is, effectively.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's still less expensive than your direct-to-consumer site.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's an interesting situation. The second trend that we have seen, Aaron, is just more of an uneven e-commerce sales by category. We saw in the first half that categories like beauty, grocery, and fast fashion grew, at least for our data set, with about 14%. While categories like home decor, home furnishings, furniture, consumer electronics, and tools and hardware continue to lag sales. Right? It was just a very uneven distribution. Now, if you really look at, again, the consumer psyche and the impact of the COVID, etc., and I was really looking at some trends, like what is the household debt effectively in the US, and apparently that has increased in Q2 by about $46 billion. It has sort of gone to about $17.6 trillion overall is the household debt. It's a big shift coming from as to where it is. So effectively, I think people have become a lot more deliberate in terms of deciding as to what they want to purchase. And during the COVID times, I think there was an inordinate spike when it came to segments like the home decor and home furnishings, electronics, and so on, and which we are seeing still a bit of a post-COVID lag, which is hitting these industries. Like home decor, for example, was down by almost about 15% year on year in the first half. Right. So I think those are the things which has to be put into consideration in the overall context, primarily because when you talk about the overall e-commerce sales, it is not that the entire e-commerce online sales is booming everywhere or the entire online sales is flat. It is just a very uneven distribution, essentially, on the category wise that we are able to see. The third and the final part is most retailers, and this is like, again, kudos to all the retailers for this one. They were able to map the consumer shifts quite well. And they have made some dramatic changes to their product mix just to stay relevant and improve the profitability part as well. This was interesting, Aaron, primarily because if I were to really look at from the spectrum of 2018 or 2019, the quantum of change seems to be a lot higher. I'll give you an example of one of our tools and hardware client. In 2019, let us say in the first half of 2019, about 30% of their overall site sales came from products which had been launched 12 months prior to that, right? So 12 months prior to the H1 2019. That percentage, if you really compare for H1 2023, has gone up to as much as about 75 to 80%, right? So effectively, the new product and the innovation has become such an essential part of driving this. It's just incredible as to how much, when we talk about the post-COVID part and the impact which COVID had, all of these things get somehow really sidelined and not really talked about as much. But I think a big hat tip to all the e-commerce companies and retail companies, which have really sort of worked extremely hard and hustled extremely hard to ensure that the product mix is relevant overall. So that was another very interesting sort of a learning as such. So in terms of the key channel trends, the retail media advertising continues to boom. I mean, it has obviously garnered a tremendous amount of attention. My good friend, Andrew Lipsman from eMarketer or Insider Retail Intelligence just keeps on reporting about this thing. So we are seeing very clearly about 17% plus of total US digital advertising spend can actually go into retail media, which is huge. And no surprises, 75% of that would go to Amazon ads. But I really wanted to call out.
Yeah, really quick. Yeah. I just want to jump back before we jump into this a little bit more, because TJ dropped a comment in here. When we're talking about marketplaces, is there, which one is this, top 5 or top 10?
We're talking about the top 10 marketplaces as such, TJ.
All right. Awesome. Yep.
So on the retail media part, advertising, so this one is interesting. But everyone talks about Amazon, but we are seeing Walmart make some significant changes and significant sort of adaptations as well to really get to a different level. So something really wanted to call out, because they have sort of played typically like the Walmart, like a very quiet game, but we have seen they make some tremendous progress in the last 12 months, essentially. So just wanted to call that out as such. We have also seen that the primary channels like Google or Microsoft advertising and Meta really applying AI to protect their walled gardens as well, Aaron. Because I think Chrome has already announced that 1% of the Chrome browsers would start deprecating the third-party cookies in the first quarter of 2024. And they want to finish that entire cookie deprecation by end of 2024. Well, Apple is not really making their life easier, because iOS 17, they are really sort of just taking their entire consumer privacy to a different level altogether. So that is really forcing or compelling the channels to really build their own walled gardens. And that's an important component which I really wanted to highlight in this entire thing. I mean, we are seeing very clearly campaigns like Performance Max and so on being a very dominant force within Google. Like, I mean, at this point in time, if I were to look at our data set, and we currently work with about 150 retail direct-to-consumer e-commerce companies, we estimate about 70% of the total Google ad budget is being already influenced by AI. And our prediction is by end of next year, this is most likely going to be 100%. So AI, I think, is one of the areas where definitely the channels have made a tremendous amount of progress. It literally has transformed marketing forever. And I think that's one of the other trends became extremely sort of prevalent this year. So we work, as I mentioned, with a wide base of customers, and these are the top 3 questions which our customers are asking us regarding the upcoming holiday season, right? So I wanted to sort of call them out. The first one is, I mean, we saw that the holiday seasons are getting a lot stretched, a lot longer as such, right? The Prime had a Prime Early Access Day. I'm pretty sure that would be a norm this year as well. They'll probably have it again mid of October and so on. So the question is, when suddenly you had to earlier contend with about a month-long holiday season, which became a month and a half, and now it has become a 2-month-long holiday season, how exactly should you really even plan for this? The second question which our clients are asking us, I mean, how do the SMB businesses even compete with the larger ones, what is likely to be a very brutal holiday season as such? Because if you really look at H1, the numbers, I mean, even though the overall segment has grown by about 6%, but I think it's pretty fragmented. I mean, essentially, some segments have really grown at a faster pace, others are not really as much, and so on.
Yeah,
And
I mean, you throw in that really quick, just throw in this on that point. I'm combining Prime Day and a brutal holiday season. You know, a lot of brands, I would say the majority of brands that I'm talking to on Prime Day this year, they had great sales.
Yeah.
They moved a lot of product, but they didn't make any more money because the discounts were so deep.
Yeah.
And so is that a kind of foreshadowing for, you know, Q4 holiday season where you're going to have to discount quite a bit, and then we get into the balance issue of inventory, and is it worth it or not?
So that's a great point, Aaron. Actually, my next slide probably talks on that, so I'll just get into that exactly. The point that you are making, probably the next one, or maybe a couple of them, and then which categories are likely to emerge as winners. So I think in terms of the holiday forecast, when we talk about it, just to give you a bit of a basis, and I'll get back to your comment later as well. So we are seeing very clearly, I think, there is a certain way that we really choose those customers. And currently at this point in time, I think they aggregate about mid-size and large customers with more than $700 million in online holiday sales revenue. But then our challenge is, how do we take the 700 million and really extend it or extrapolate it for the entire US e-commerce, which is huge. So that's, I think, where the selection of customers becomes important. We normally have focused on a handful of categories like electronics, apparel and shoes, home decor, and so on and so forth, which have a strong holiday skew. And last but not the least, I think, I mean, since we have been doing it since August 2008, I mean, this is the 16th holiday forecast, we have really been able to build a model. So when you talk about building a model, I mean, we track some actual week-wise website visits, the website sales and channel-wise investments and so on. And based on these primary variables, we really build our own, what is called the calculated metrics also. We segment this data mobile and desktop. Interestingly, in 2008, as you can imagine, Aaron, the mobile contribution was 0, right? Because iPhone was still significantly lagging behind BlackBerry. And the mobile shopping wasn't really even a thing at that point in time. But anyway, that's a different story altogether. And we separately analyze the YTD trends. This time it was like little tricky because when we analyze the last 2 years, 2021 was a COVID bump year, right? And we had to factor that in. And last year, the inflation, if you remember back in July 2022, it was almost about 8.6%. It sort of fell to 7.1% in November, but still it was pretty high, right? So we have to factor all of this stuff in, because otherwise, how do you really even come up with a model which is able to predict? And the last part is we still continue to place a significant weightage in the back to school data as well. So just wanted to give everyone an understanding. And we are coming up with a forecast which, had we done it 3 months back, Aaron, would have been a lot more conservative. So we are cautiously optimistic on a 9% year-on-year e-commerce growth this holiday season. The reason I'm saying cautiously optimistic, I'll sort of get to those points as well. But I have some macro factors which I wanted to share with the group, which we believe will really help drive about 9% growth. The first thing is exactly what you mentioned. In my 16 years, or now 16 years or 15 years of really doing this forecast, I have never seen any year where the shoppers are so much willing to wait for the attractive deals, deep discounts, and buy only that time. And I have a certain stat, the next couple of slides as well, which will really help sort of just substantiate that part as well. Right. So effectively, if you really look at like June Prime Day sales sort of increased by about 20% jump in the year-on-year unit sales, right? But effectively, if you really look at profitability, it was down the dumps because you're just selling stuff and selling it for cheap. I believe just given the overall volume as well as the value lag, we will see businesses get into, again, a deep discounting mode. The question is, do you really have that level of financial, let us say, strength to keep on discounting for 2.5 months or 2 months? Or is there a way for you to be more creative on the discounts? So we are projecting typically for a $100 million e-commerce company, their time would be well worth it if they can spend on identifying about 3 to 4 spikes that they really want to create through creative use of promotional strategies as such. But we believe that this would not be one consistent discounting through the entire season or promotion through the entire season. It will be a combination of 3 to 5 spikes within this about roughly a month and a half, like starting with Prime Early Access Day. The dates are not divulged yet. I mean, if last year's was to be any reference, probably would be around 10th or 11th of October as such. And from then till about Christmas, about 3 to 5 holiday spikes. The question is, how creatively are you able to anticipate these spikes, and how creatively are you able to plan your product and promotion mix specifically for that as well? So those, I think is the two things which I really wanted to share. The second thing is, effectively, this would be a slightly longer holiday season as well. I mean, Thanksgiving is on the 23rd, and so we really have some extra days also for the core holiday shopping to happen as well. And the last part is the consumer sentiment index. I don't know if anyone has been keeping a track on this. This is the UMich, I mean, Aaron, your land, University of Michigan Consumer Sentiment Index. If you really look at the last 3 months average, there is a dramatic spike. The consumer sentiment, if you track back to almost exactly a year back, was at about a 55 percentage point, 55, 56 percentage point. That has spiked almost about 12 percentage points. So it has become 55 to 67 percentage, which I think is a really good expression in terms of how the customer feels or how the consumer is feeling. And we believe that this will go into a long way. So now let us just put all of these stuff together. We have the customer who's feeling good. They are careful because they are researching and they are willing to perfectly willing to wait for those deals. They have been spoiled because of Prime Day, the deep discounting which happened during Prime Day. So if you keep all of these factors, I mean, I don't think it requires a rocket scientist to really predict, Aaron, that this holiday season would be stretched, and effectively it would really have, again, see a tremendous amount of deep discounting. As long as the consumer sentiment remains favorable, which it seems to be at this point in time with a very clear upward lift, I think that should be a very clear positive sign. This is the time for you to be creative on the promotion and plan the holiday promotional mix as such. So a pretty long narrative to the point that you sort of mentioned, but there are a couple of other things as well which I wanted to point out. And as you know, I mean, you talked about the retail intelligence component. So we have our retail intelligence unit inside NetElixir, and we use our tool, as I mentioned, the AI tool Elixir Insight, to really gather all of this data. One interesting part that we have observed specifically in the first 6 months is the number of items per order or units per order has increased a little bit. That to an extent offsets this inflation advantage of last year. I'm just using the word advantage because obviously the item was priced higher. That with the inflation subsiding to a 3%, 3.2% level, understandably the prices came down. But interestingly, the customer has not really cut back on the average order value or the order value essentially. They actually had, it has sort of just gone, in fact, slightly the AOV has increased as well. But the items per order has increased. So I think the inflation effect has really got a little bit countered there. The second is, which is probably the most interesting part, and again, I'm just repeating probably the same thing, Aaron, that I think you mentioned, that people are perfectly okay waiting for the deals, essentially. And as you can see in this case, we compared for the first, let us say, about 6 months or of this year, what was the spike that we experienced during the sales event versus the non-sales part. It was 11.4% higher this year compared to last year, 2022. So people are willing to wait. They wait for the sales events, and if the discounts and the deals are good, then they are willing to spend more. So it's a very interesting offer. I'll give you an example of Mother's Day. We sort of work with a very large online flower shop or flower company and so on, or flowers and gifting. And effectively, if you really look at 10 days prior to that, before Mother's Day, and they had pretty aggressive sales as well, the overall lift was higher compared to, if I were to compare back with H1 Mother's Day in 2019. So that really shows as to how much people are willing to wait. It's just it has really become a very, very deal-focused approach to e-commerce or online selling.
Yeah,
so
it's also going to make it, I'm just thinking of how it's worked for the past few years, which is why Prime Day kept getting moved up, right? Mm-hmm. And the launch of, the holiday season, we'll say, and the sale season there, it was kind of the opposite.
Yeah.
right? Like they were
Yeah.
pushing it up to grab the dollars out of the wallet early.
Yeah.
And what you're kind of saying is like, hey, people are going to be they're watching and waiting, and they're going to strike whenever the deals are.
Yeah. Yeah. And another good example was if you really look at the Prime early access day last October, I think it was 12, 13, 13, 14. After that, the weeks that followed that, actually the sales were lower compared to the previous, the comparable period. I think 21 is not really a fair comparison, but so it's very interesting as to how the online shopping has really become very concentrated during these promotional periods. So that's, I think, one part which I really wanted to emphasize. But
Really,
one
more quick thing, just we've had a bunch more people join. If you're joining, or if you didn't hear it at the beginning, if you have questions along the way, drop it in the chat or drop it in the Q&A, and we'll get those answered in real time as they come in. Awesome.
There are a couple of things, potential headwinds, let us say, which can somehow really dampen the spirit of holidays. The first one is, if you really look at the pool of pandemic era savings, that has really sort of come down or decreased quite a bit. So that's, I think, one of the things which will definitely be in play this year. The second one is more concerning, which is high credit balances. I don't know if anyone is sort of tracking this, but if you really look at the Fed's recent report, effectively in Q2 this year, the outstanding credit balances hadn't crossed $1 trillion mark, first time ever. Right? It is at $1.011 trillion was what it is. And that was a jump of almost about $45 billion. Right? That's where I think the credit balance is. So people are really maxing out on their credit cards. And that's something which is also to be kept in mind. The household debt also has really gone to about, I think, $17.6 trillion and so on and so forth. That has increased. It used to be 16 trillion to about 17.6 is a pretty big shift and increase. So all of these things, I think, have to be considered as well. The question, though, is, will it really hamper the holiday season? This holidays, not very sure about it, but something to be kept in mind as well. On the same note, another thing which we are seeing is the number of BNPL, the percentage of purchases happening in the buy now, pay later option, right? So that has really gone up. But what is concerning in that, if you really look at the lending tree report effectively from last month, you would see that the percentage of delayed payments or payment defaults have increased also by quite a few percentage points. So effectively, I think that concept of immediate gratification, buying now and just sort of a credit rib part, I think at some point in time, something to be really careful about. The second is more of a macro factor. I don't know if those of you who have been sort of keeping a track of the inflation numbers, they had fallen to a 3% level. Again, in July and August, they have increased from 3 to 3.2 and 3.7 now. Now, if this trend continues, we may enter the holiday season with a 4% plus inflation rate. Now, albeit, I think that inflation is not really distributed equally in terms of the increase per category, but something to be really kept in mind, because understandably, the customer works with a finite amount that they have really sort of reserved to really spend. And specifically, if the items really cost more, then it becomes a bigger challenge for them as well. The third part, I've not really mentioned it here, but something I really wanted to also bring up. There was a recent, the Goldman Sachs, the retail summit that they had 12th, 13th, 14th. I think they have really mentioned, I think one of Wayfair or one of the groups, or was it, ThreadUp, I think was the group. And they have mentioned that they've seen a drop in the percentage of shoppers coming from the less than $60,000 a year household income level. So I think the 60K and lower household income category, there was a decrease in the overall purchases made by that group as well. So something to be careful of, I think, again, would be very category specific, cannot be extrapolated, but really wanted to throw it out there that all of these potentially can be essential headwinds which can deter this thing.
Yeah, but really quick on that. So do you think then, as you're walking through there, so then what it seemed like when there's a little bit of a softening around January, when people were thinking something's going to hit, but it didn't quite hit.
Right.
It's like savings were running out and then credit was ramping up. And now we're at a point where people have maxed out credit, at some point in time, it has to slow down, which would then coincide with why people, they still need or want things, but they're going to wait for it to be deeply discounted because the credit is running short.
Yeah.
Which would then tie into exactly what you're talking about with overall income level. Naturally, they're going to have a lower max.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So multiple factors are in play, Aaron, in this one. I mean, to top that, I mean, the interest rates continue to be extremely high. I mean, at this point in time, the cost of capital is almost about 10% for the businesses effectively. It used to be about 3% or 4%, whatever it is, right? So all of this effectively, how much can you discount is the question. I think, but at the same time, very clearly our data shows that discounting, unfortunately, is when effectively you are seeing those sales spikes. So how do you really creatively balance this part can really define how successful you are during the holiday season. Moving on, we wanted to present the category level holiday forecast also. This is more of a year-on-year growth in e-commerce sales revenue as such. Now, certain categories, apparel and beauty, at least for our data set, they did well in H1, right? 12% growth for apparel and beauty, 19%, and they'll continue in this. But what we are effectively betting on is there would be potential turning point for categories like consumer electronics and gifting. I don't think there is a surprise because it's very H2 skewed. So I don't think that's a challenge. But I think consumer electronics, we are actually predicting a bit of a turnaround. And the reason being, and it's a complex one, and this is just an analysis of the last few years that we have been doing this holiday forecast webinar and that entire research. We have seen that the shoppers who are purchasing electronics, they are significantly influenced by 2 or 3 broad factors, Aaron. The first one is very generic, right? It's almost like, is Aaron does he have, even in his almost like a mind space, is consumer electronics there somewhere, right? Yeah, there is an intention or an inclination to sort of create or buy something in the consumer electronics segment. Now that we have seen is driven significantly through innovative products. And again, no affiliations or no special love, but Apple has really been a big driver of that innovative products part. And they have really sort of created and sort of fitted that consumer electronics in this holiday list, let us say, right? Your perceptual list. So we believe with the launch of the iPhone 15, that would be a big step. It will be interesting because it's new, right? It's something new. It can be very expensive, but I'm just saying that at least consumer electronics will come back into your the perceptual map, or so as the mind space. That's, I think, one. The second part is we believe there is a bit of an inventory challenge which many of the custom companies are really dealing with, and they would engage in deep discounting just because if the innovative products are coming out, they can't really be carrying the old inventory. So expect consumer electronics segment to be really impacted by heavy discounting. So these are, I think, the 2 broad factors which we believe will play a role. But net, it will obviously lead to an increase in e-commerce sales. That's what we are at least anticipating. The question is, in terms of profitability, it may be a very different picture altogether. But just wanted to present it out there. I'm happy to answer any very specific questions on any category. I mean, as much as data that we have and what we can share, but more than happy to share this. And if you are interested in a copy of this, I mean, Aaron can probably share it with you, or I'll be more than happy to share this deck with you as well.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Anybody wants a copy, just ping us. We'll make sure to connect you.
Fantastic.
And that was actually what you're saying there. That's top line too, right? That's overall.
Yes.
But again, it's playing into the fact of, hey, well, how much did I have to discount to get?
Yeah. How much and what point in time and when on what as well. Like, for example, will category level discounts be more important compared to a site-wide discount? Right. So things like that, what are those categories? When should we do? And so on and so forth. So it's a very interesting landscape in terms of the promotional part as such. So those are the pieces.
Yeah, a couple questions come in on this. Do you have any data or forecast insights for luxury consumer goods who don't tend to discount?
We have not segregated it separately. I wouldn't, sorry.
Oh, okay. It's cool. Do you have any examples of brands that have not discounted much during those promo periods? Are they losing out, or is participating even at a sharp discount margin hits still worth it?
Yeah, there are some brands who are there. Specifically, out of the customers that we sort of work with, I think we have seen everyone discount. I mean, this year has been a very interesting or unique year, but some brands have really had this policy of not discounting. And this year, even they have really been forced to discount, but discount in a limited manner as well. Like, for example, one of the brands, let us say Monica Rich Kozan, they're in the jewelry segment. I mean, they don't really come up with discount always. They have very specific events around which the discounts are there. But I think just discounting has become really a part of the strategy almost. So the number of options that I can think of upfront are very far and few. Let me move on to the next part of this. And this is more of the recommendation. So what should you do? I mean, this is the situation. This is what it is. I mean, having said that, I've been the 9% overall growth forecast that we have is quite optimistic. I mean, effectively from that perspective. But how does the small business marketer or mid-sized businesses really even compete? So we had a list of growth marketing recommendations. The first one, which I really wanted to classify, is effectively we have for a very long time, and still many businesses continue to do that, they consider the marketplaces and the direct to consumer from two different sides of the business, and often those sides of the business don't even talk to each other. Unfortunately, I think that is really impacting your efficiency as well as profitability. So it may be worthwhile to really look at the business holistically. At the same time, really ask a question as to what exactly is my expectation from each side of the business. If direct to consumer is 50% and 50% is the marketplace's business, what is the strategy that you have holistically? At the same time, what is the strategy you have for individual? This is a simple product metrics. So for example, if you map all of your SKUs based on the profit margin and the velocity, the number of units you are selling in a certain time, that can probably help purely the profitability part. But then there are different things like which of those marketplace products can act as a gateway product for your brand and things like that. But the point that I'm trying to make is you really need to have a holistic marketing plan rather than really separating or treating the marketplaces separate from the direct to consumer business as well, purely from the overall business strategy perspective. That's the first recommendation I would have. The second recommendation is, I think it's important for you to shift the narrative from an average customer to high value customers. I mean, effectively, this holiday season is going to be a massive land grab. I mean, it's almost like going to be a market share grab, and that's going to be huge. And there are going to be companies who are going to come after your most high valued or most valued customer, essentially. And they will try to essentially lure them off. The question is, how well do you really know your high value customers? And how well are you really equipped to protect these high value customers? And the third question is, once you really have this list, how exactly are you utilizing this to really win more high value customers as well? Right. So this is a very clear database modeling and so on. There are certain real-time tools, for example, our Elixir Insights, the vertical AI platform, it sort of analyzes the live data stream and so on. And we are able to classify using predictive analytics that these are the folks who are likely to spend more, etc. But this is the time when you already know that deal making, the discounting and the promotions are going to really be the key driving factor. Do not lose your high value customers and do whatever you can to really win more high value customers. That would be a key component of what of our recommendations or the recommended strategy is. The third one is something which I've sort of shared in, I think, all of our previous 15 presentations or webinars on the holiday forecast as well. Have a plan B ready. We have seen so many times, actually for every holiday season, whatever we are able to predict or any analyst is able to predict and so on and so forth, there is something which does not really go per the expectations. I mean, it's bound to happen, right? I mean, there are just so many variables at play, macro, micro, and different level, the competitor level, and so on and so forth. So having a plan B ready is not really a good to have thing. It's just a must. I mean, you don't really have an option but to have a plan B ready in terms of marketing. And the fourth and the last one is more of the execution, the operational efficiency part. These holiday season is going to be intense, right? So And effectively, there's going to be a lot of competition. So can you really look at time as a spectrum on which you are competing with other companies? When I say time, effectively, I'll give you an example. I mean, this is what we did for companies like Circa Lighting and some of the customers that we are working with. It's almost like what we call a holiday operating model, where you have really a way of having digital marketing experts working around the clock technical support. You really are able to really sort of respond back and make those changes. There is a tremendous value. I'll give you an example of those 4 days, the Thanksgiving to Cyber Monday or Tuesday. Those 4 or 5 days, effectively, I think that is the time. Just through active management or proactive management, you can really get a lot of customers or a lot of share away from your competition back to your business. If you are aggressive enough, if you are smart enough in terms of implementing this thing. But you really need to have an operating model, because without an operating model, understandably, you'll not be able to do that. I'll just give you a very clear example from NetElixir. I mean, for example, when we really track specifically that time, right? Basically between the Thanksgiving to Cyber Monday, our overall numbers are 3 times as much as the industry average. And we are able to do that just because of a very high degree of operational efficiency, constantly working sort of just making those changes and taking advantages of those opportunities which appear, right? I mean, there are just multiple proofs. I talked about Circa Lighting. Circa Lighting was a great example in this case. I mean, the Thanksgiving Cyber Monday revenue was up 35%. The cost is minus 50%, right? So there is a tremendous value in terms of going ahead and identifying those opportunities on a real-time basis and capitalize on them. And honestly speaking, in a year which is as competitive as this one, and a holiday season which is expected to be brutally competitive, those things really go a very long way, very, very long way. So those are the pieces, Aaron, which I had. I'll just sort of end with our holiday calendar. Now, this is our 10th year of publishing the holiday calendar. So what we have done is we have taken our forecast and we have really tried to break down the competitive intensity on a day-by-day basis, right? How competitive would it be? Because competitive intensity, understandably, purely from a search marketing perspective, where we specialize in search marketing, your cost per click goes up and your online sales is higher. There's a lot of competition there, right? So anything in green, the competitive intensity we are projecting is low. When you say low, the year-on-year increase in online sales actually would be less than 6% in that thing. Sorry, it's a little sort of a typo out there, and anything with a high competitive intensity is greater than 17%. So this has to be reversed almost effectively in this case. But there are certain other trends also. We expect that BNPL usage is likely to surge during the holiday season. And that is likely to range from 20 to 25% higher than H1. We believe that many omni-channel retailers will really go ahead and engage in utilizing Bose. And that would really drive to a massive, massive percentage contribution of the last minute shoppers between December 17th and 23rd. And as I mentioned earlier, marketplaces actually may, for the holiday season, account for these 2 months, account for about 55% of all the online sales. And last but not the least, while you focus on the holiday period till Christmas, we have seen that me buys have really become extremely important as well. So specifically, I think a lot of sales starts on Boxing Day or the day after Christmas. And then it continues till about 30th. And there is a significant volume of purchasing which happens at that point in time as well. So don't really sort of lose sight of that as well. You can download the calendar. I think there were some typos in that. The calendar should help you in terms of planning this holiday promotions effectively. And as I mentioned, I mean, if you really use this to plan out your holiday promos, I think the outcome that you can have is quite different. I mean, I can vouch firsthand in the first 9 years that we have really released it. It really has been downloaded by over, I mean, we were sort of counting it close to about 7,000 businesses in the first 9 years. And effectively, it has really helped them to be a little more planned, have a plan B ready for the holiday season. Now, this is the URL. You can really go to netelixir.com/events/holiday readiness and really download from there. But that's what I had, Aaron. And
I dropped that in the chat for everybody as well.
Awesome. Perfect. I just wanted to end with, I mean, some concluding remarks, Aaron. I mean, we have sort of shared a lot of data and so on. We are forecasting a 9% year-on-year holiday growth this season. We have factored in the inflation rates in 2022 was about 7.1% in November and so on, 2023. We expect about 4%. I hope I'm wrong there. I hope it comes back to 3%, but I think sort of trending towards 4%. Season for deal seekers, we expect this holiday season to have a higher percentage of deliberate deal seekers than any prior season, researched deliberate deal seeking. There would be a long holiday season. So you really have to plan for a significantly longer than usual holiday season by being creative with your marketing mix. AI would be a significant differentiator when it comes to e-commerce marketing this holiday season. And we believe that the AI marketing supported businesses will substantially outpace the companies which are yet to embrace AI. And last but not the least, have a plan B in place. And our holiday e-commerce marketing calendar can definitely help. So that's what I had, Aaron. I mean, we are, as you probably know by now, we have our annual event where we bring together the academy and the industry leaders. We have it next weekend. And yeah, I mean, fascinating. It's just a different world altogether. We sort of do it in a sculpture garden, and where we have Sheena Iyengar. She just came up. Both of them actually came up with their book. So they're going to be presenting, doing the book signing, and sort of doing the innovation workshop essentially for our attendees. So if you're interested, we have a couple of slots still left. Feel free to scan the QR code and fill in the form and let me know as well. But that's what I had. Happy to really take any questions at all. You can email me as well, Udayan at NetElixir. Happy to share with you a copy of the deck as well.
Yeah, and I think so. We just had a few people request a copy, and if you can, go ahead and email Udayan at NetElixir.
Absolutely.
If not, Mark, TJ, others, I got you written down here, so we'll make sure that you get a copy of it for sure. The ZA say as well. And others, if you have questions, as we get the last just few minutes here, drop them to the chat or drop them to the Q&A, and we'll get them tackled. And if not, again, this has been fantastic, Udayan. It's been,
thank you.
And it's nice to see. I mean, I'm talking to brands all day, every day, and what you're seeing and the data you're reporting is lining up what I'm hearing, conjecturally from brands as a whole. But it's nice to see the hard data being crunched on the back end and having it all aligned. I totally agree. It's going to be a deep discounting season. The question will be, while it drives top line, overall profitability, what does that look like at the end of the day for these brands as a whole? And maybe it's a balance of, hey, I've got a ton of inventory, I want to move it, versus I don't, and I can dial back. But just know, if you do, there's probably going to be lower movement. Any last minute things as we get here to got a bunch of people saying thank you, but any last minute things here as we wrap up?
I think, it's going to be a unique holiday season, right? We have never really seen this level of deep discounting ever. And it is not really deep discounting without a reason, Aaron. It's basically deep discounting leading to actually a spike in sales, which we have calibrated this time as well. So it's interesting. I think what would really differentiate the winners from losers this time in the holiday season is how creative are you with your the holiday promotional strategy. I hope that I never have to really say this, because that really eats into the margins, and I'm very sensitive to that as such. But this year, unfortunately, with the overall trends and plus all the different macro factors in play as well, I don't think businesses have too much of an option but to engage in very creative promotional mix through this entire, let us say, 2 months or a little over 2 months holiday shopping period as such. One of the things that I would really be careful of, Amazon's idea or Walmart's idea and Target would sort of follow as well. With the early access day, they are sort of grabbing a fair share of the wallet, effectively the consumer's wallet. So you really have to look at your overall direct-to-consumer as well as the marketplace strategy holistically as well. So that's my only other recommendation other than being creative with your promotional plans. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, again, thanks everybody for shooting in all the great comments, all the great questions. Look for a follow-up email from us. I encourage everybody to have a follow-up conversation with Udayan and the team over at NetElixir. They're fantastic supporters of the network. They're just doing some amazing things across the board for a lot of brands in the digital space. Look for a follow-up email from me on the side. I'd love to have a conversation with you. Just kind of network strategy session. We can kind of inform you of upcoming in-person events that we're doing. We're going to do close to 100 dinners this year. We're going to be back in New York this second week of December. I believe it's December 13th for our full day event in the city there in Midtown. So look for a follow-up email. I'd love to have a conversation with you. And with that, I think we're going to wrap up this webinar as a whole. Udayan, thanks again. Great friend,
Thank you very
partner,
much for
support of
having
the
me on.
network.
And
this
happy holidays in advance to everyone. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Dan. With that, we're going to wrap up. I hope everybody stays safe, take care, and look forward to having you at a future event. Thanks again, Dan. It was awesome.
Thank you. Take care, Evan. Bye.